Hello, once again, and welcome to our monthly Oneness conversations. We're so excited to have you join us for the month of April 2023. Our theme for this month is abundance. And springtime, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, springtime is such a beautiful time for abundance. So we're going to have a fabulous conversation today. If you're new to me, my name is Kim Lyde. I'm a holistic healing coach, board certified music therapist, and just super, super happy to be part of these conversations every month. And I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leader, Judith, so she can open us in prayer today.
Well, thank you so much, Kim and Joey, for being here on a monthly basis on the first Monday of each month. It's a third Monday of each month. It's a wonderful way to start the month and to come in the middle of the month and build up to a great ending of each new moon, becoming a full moon. And so again, on behalf of all of us, to those that are listening in either in the present moment or in the future, we want to thank you for joining us at any time that you feel called to help feed and nourish your souls. And I'm very blessed to be living on the Algonquin Anishinaabe sacred native land and territory in Canada, in the region of Quebec, right across from the National Capital Region of Canada, the capital city of Ottawa in Ontario. And we're into the springtime, and it's a wonderful time to give thanks and gratitude. So I'd like to start today by simply inviting each of us to go deep within our own core and close our eyes and maybe give thanks and gratitude for even those challenging times that we're living through. There are also times of grace, and in every event and experience, there's always polarity. So we have seen that we've come through the Eastern time of the Stations of the Cross, where the Christian traditions honor the resurrection and birth of new life and the power of love. And we see that our multicultural religions, the Muslims, the Hebrews, they also have their unique traditions, as do the indigenous peoples and native peoples of North America and around the world have their traditions to go into the springtime with new hope and rejuvenation. So I'd like to take a time to just take our own hearts and our minds to a place of deep gratitude and give thanks today that we're going to be discussing a theme that's very important, and it's on the theme of abundance. So thank you all for being here, and we give thanks and blessings to you all, and may our hearts be touched and our souls fed as we gather as one universal humanity, connecting with each other to the highest spiritual awareness of knowing we indeed are the ones we've been waiting for, and we're the change that we need to see. So on a universal basis, thank you all for gathering and opening your minds and hearts and being present to each other in new ways, by which as we go out into the world in each new day, we get better and better of living from care, love, and compassion. And so it is, we honor each tradition and each family on earth as the ones that bring forth the children to be the new emerging, like the spring emerges with new plants, so do we as human beings emerge as a new species, because we learn from each other. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and gratitude to all. So as we slowly come back into this wonderful time of conversations from the heart, I would like to invite Joey and Marty to take a little moment to share how the theme of abundance speaks to their lives and the last 4 weeks, particularly of what's occurred in the ways that they can see. There's so many aspects to one word, that in the sharing of one word, we can see a much expanded consciousness of what it means uniquely for all of us. So Kim, would you like to lead us off?
Sure, it's always a pleasure. Let's see. So the past few weeks or so for abundance, I have found that I have an abundance of time, which is interesting because I don't always feel like I have a lot of time. I think at least between the three of us, I think I'm probably the busiest with all the sessions that I do, but I've been realizing that when I'm very intentional about how I'm using my time in every minute, I actually have quite a bit of time. I managed to listen to two full books on Audible while I was driving to all of my sessions, and I finished them, both of them, in like a week or two. It was not very long, and it just made me realize, like, wow, I can make the time to do what feeds my soul. And these are books that I love. I couldn't stop listening, like, literally, even when I came home I would turn them on as I was doing things around the house, because I was like, this is so fascinating, I just couldn't stop. So that's how I finished them so quickly, was like constantly listening to them. And things like that, they feed my soul, they nourish me when I feel like I'm being fed these uplifting, inspiring thoughts, whether it's from authors or podcasts or whatever. It's being really intentional about feeding my soul so that I can then pour out to others. So that's been a real blessing of abundance for me, at least over the past few weeks or so.
Wonderful and so well said. How about building on that, Joey?
Yeah, great. I feel that way too, where there's a lot of different material that I like to listen to and consume while I'm doing other things. I feel like sometimes it makes it more pleasurable, even just doing mundane things like dishes, or like you said, like driving. It feels like there's definitely an aspect of abundance that derives from perspective, um, and gratitude, to kind of, in the same way that Kim was saying, like find these places that, even having a busy schedule, where you can have an abundance of time even built within something that's busy. um, and that's kind of what it's been for me in terms of the season changes. Here in Colorado, when the season changes, it kind of goes back and forth very quickly. So just a couple weeks ago, I was up in the mountains, and we got a lot of snow that came down around the mountains, and it was so nice to have that abundance of snow. It felt like it was in the middle, like smack middle of the winter, with how much snow we got, and the conditions just felt like we were in the middle of winter, but really it was the end of the season. It was actually the beginning of April, when usually there's a lot less snow. So it was nice to have such great conditions. I felt like I got to squeeze a little bit more of something I love and I'm passionate about to be able to do, to be out with a good friend of mine. Had access to his uncle's cabin that was up in the mountains. So we had very close access to the resorts, and we're able to spend a lot of time in nature, in the mountains together, in the trees, and hang out with lots and lots of powder around, which is one of the most pleasurable things for people in this sport. And then on the opposite side of that, you can see how sunny it is out here. It's finally starting to warm up. So I had to take an opportunity to catch some of this abundant sunshine and bring my computer outside. And I feel grateful that I have the ability to be able to do that, to be mobile from my office, which smells like jasmine flowers right now because they're blooming. So it was a hard choice. Do I want to sit in the jasmine scent, or do I want to sit out here in the sunshine? And I chose the sunshine, obviously. So spent a bit of time the other day getting my garden ready. I made the wonderful learning experience of putting stinging nettle in my garden, because it's a wonderful herb. Has many different great uses, actually, medicinally. And at the same time, it grows kind of like mint, where the roots actually go deep and underneath and they spread across. So it's been kind of invasive in my garden. So I spent a good chunk of yesterday getting about half of it out, and finding other uses for it. I learned that you can actually take what you pull out, soak it inside of water for like a week or a few days, and then you can use that water to actually bring nutrients back to the plants again. So I'm gonna play with that and try that out. So I'm excited for the spring coming ahead. There's a lot of abundance ahead with my garden and the joy of learning more things about it. Uh, yeah, and it was that piece too, I think I was battling with initially when I was trying to get the nettle out, of why did I do this? Oh, I should have known this. Like, I'm giving myself so much extra work. And then I kind of like came back to it, like, oh, this is just a learning experience. I learned as a gardener, like, this is a plant I probably should have put inside of a pot by itself and not inside of my garden. And now I've learned that. And then because of that, I've also learned that something I wouldn't have probably if it was inside of a pot, that I could also take it's so abundant. Actually, nettle is very, very abundant. It's the first thing to grow, and it grows like crazy. It's actually hard to keep up with. And now I can know that I can take that abundance and soak it in water, and then use that as a nutrient dense water that now will help other plants in my garden. And I don't think I would have learned that otherwise. So that proof of work of the difficulty of getting this invasive weed out that has a lot of medicinal components for myself and my garden that now I can kind of take full circle and start to use. What about you, Judith?
Well, I just love the stories because it relates to, we've just gone through 3 astounding days of hot, warm weather in central eastern Canada, from having had an ice storm the week before, where the power went out, in some cases for over a week in some homes in Quebec. And so 1 week later, we're having sunshine that is early spring. We do not have spring here that early. As a rule, we had summer here the last 3 days. So I've been sitting in the yard like you, Joey, and observing the beauty of, I just love nature. Nature is what really feeds my soul. And what was happening is all the birds are coming early, and all the crocuses and all the flowers are budding far too early. Now today we have heavy rains for the rest of the week and back to our normal temperatures. But the word normal is an interesting word for these times, because we're not living through normal times. We're living through changing times where climate change is real. And I love the stories of how when you're working in your garden, nature is our greatest teacher. And how by working with nature, we learn so much about ourselves. And when we begin to see that nature will bring exactly the plants that I need, because plants are medicine from the indigenous perspective, everything's native to earth. And my body can get the nutrients it needs from the medicines that are native to the place I live. So even in boiling, I was going to ask, if you boil your nettles, like many times you can make cups of tea from the shrubs that we have in our garden. And there's nothing like natural tea right from the earth when you make it properly. And with the sap flowing right now, we're not supposed to have our plants coming up right now. So the challenge is all the plants and all the natural life that are underneath the leaves in our trees. Unfortunately, many Canadians will go out and they'll rake all the leaves now because we're so wonderful to have the snow gone all of a sudden. And we can be out in the sunshine raking leaves, but we're affecting all the life forms in the leaves that are not yet ready to come forth to bring forth spring into summer. So we do a lot of damage because we lack the awareness of the medicines of the indigenous spirituality of how to care for the earth and ourselves and each other. But I think we're learning from all this process how interconnected we all are and how interconnected all the plants are. For example, the trees communicate with each other. So in springtime, some of the trees are bringing forth buds already, far too early. And if we have colder weather in the next few weeks, those buds are going to go and be affected in some way. So when we're learning about abundance, we see that there used to be many, many, many seasons in Canada, 4. Now we're going into a period, we seem to go right from one season, the winter, almost immediately into summer now. And that does affect the flow of nature and the flow of water, and why we have extreme flooding on the lower lands of our waterways right now. So it's a very interesting time to be alive and to look at abundance in different ways. So I'd just like to say that abundance for me is just being blessed to be a privileged white settler of a descendant of elders that came here and indigenous people many, many decades ago, and were blessed to find a home in this place called North America. And I'm blessed to be living here as a person that's reached a certain age where hopefully the life experiences and events that I've been blessed to experience have given me much knowledge and wisdom, because I meet people like you. And to me, abundance is having good friends and strong families, and ways by which you learn to nurture and care for yourself in ways like you were talking about, Kim, creating that sacred space to feed our own souls and hearts, and finding ways that we can drive and hear that nurturing food on our way to give nurturing to others. But I can't be present to others unless I'm making sure I'm looking after myself. So abundance for me is Judith learning to put Judith first. And in putting Judith first, I can be a much better presence to all I meet. And the strangers that I meet today are yearning for someone to be real and authentic with them. And I think that's what I find with these programs. The more we can live from our own essence, our own real, authentic spiritual selves, the more we can be a light for other people to have hope. And that is what I feel is the abundance that's coming across all the earth. That we're going through tough times as a humanity, but we're seeing so much good stuff happening. And that good stuff is being shown on different programs like this, where we're sharing the good things that are happening as well as the challenges, as we're working in our gardens to find out new ways by which we can learn and then share what we've learned. So again, let's keep building on that theme, abundance. It's a powerful word.
Yeah, Judith, I when you were just talking just now about the self-care and how important it is to take that time, it actually reminded me of another experience that I had about probably a couple weeks ago or so. Um, and again, it was related to taking the time to practice self-care, even if you don't think you have the time. So last month, I think yeah, last month I shared that I've been using this new frequency device, the Healy device. So there's a frequency on there for energy. So in the mornings, I had been using it and turning on that energy frequency to kind of wake me up and get me going. And one morning, it wasn't really working. I wasn't feeling energized. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I just need to run it again or something. And then I stopped for a moment and I thought, well, okay, if it's not working, like maybe something else is going on. So there's a scan feature on it. So I scanned myself, and what came up was sleep and relaxation and all these like really low energy, like relaxing, taking a nap kind of activities, which at the time I couldn't take a nap or go to sleep because I had to get up and get my daughter ready for school and go out and work and do my sessions. So that wasn't an option, but it did make me stop and think, okay, how can I honor what's showing up as what my body needs right now and still do my sessions and do my work and be a mom and do all the things. So what I ended up doing is I turned on a frequency for balance, like
Mhm.
balance and wholeness, to kind of just realign myself. And then I took 5 minutes to just close my eyes and give myself like a mental break and relax and did some deep breathing. So it wasn't like a nap, but it was like a 5 minute like recharge that I was able to give myself and provide to my body in conjunction with that balancing frequency. And I felt so much better after just 5 minutes of doing that. I was like, wow, that really made a huge difference. And throughout the whole rest of my day, I didn't feel tired or drained anymore. I felt like ready to go. So, that was a huge lesson for me was, we don't always know what we need or we think we might need something, but in reality our body's trying to communicate to us another thing. So when you take the time to just investigate what is that, like for me, I did the scan to see what's coming up, what's it showing me. And then when it shows you, instead of ignoring, which I could have done because I thought, well, I can't take a nap right now, instead of ignoring the information, I decided to do something with it. So, there's always time for self-care, even if it's only 5 minutes. It's just trying to figure out how can we make a win-win situation? Like how can I still do my things and take care of me and make a compromise?
And
See what comes up.
Kim, that wonderful tool that you're using,
Yeah.
you have what I call the new science, new spirituality, and new technology and medicine working together as one. And so you have a tool, you remind me of an electric car. You have the like an electric car, you go in and get a little fill up and you rebalance and recharge your body. It's kind of like a power nap. Now, elders, I love it when you get older because your body, and Joey, you can speak to this better than me. I just find that my body knows when I need a fill up. And so I can at any time of the day just shut down for a 10-minute power nap because my body knows it, right? And I think it's when you get a certain age, if you're blessed to live long enough, the body is the greatest teacher. If you're too stubborn to care for yourself, the body will just shut down for a short while and then you come back. So, and so sometimes we have different tools. And the main thing is growing in relationship with our own bodies, as you say, Ken, to be conscious that you simply need a timeout like a child. I remember when my grandchild was little, she was being naughty, and her mother said, Shoshana, if you don't behave, you're going to have a timeout. And Shoshana said to her mother, you have a timeout too, mommy. And of course, we all thought that was funny. And the worst thing grandparents can do is laugh because you're even your child, but you can't sometimes suppress the laughter. So getting back to rejuvenation, it can come in many forms. Wonderful tools that we come with new technology, wonderful ways that elders can have, honor their bodies by just allowing them to shut down and have a timeout. Or the young ones teaching us that in the power of laughter, both she and her mother felt better after that little exchange. So I think everyone got rejuvenated through the power of laughter. So Joey, what can you do in your times of being very busy and helping others and making sure we, the caregivers, have the capacity to care for ourselves first, which is most important?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's on the same lines of respecting feedback, whether it's feedback from like the device that Kim's talking about, more of that biofeedback, and then trying new things and then seeing how your body responds to it, how you respond to it, or how you were saying, Judith, a young child telling her mom something that socially she wouldn't want to hear, but at the same time was factually correct, and getting that feedback mirrored to you and it becoming proper information. I've used the Heart Math Institute has a biofeedback device that does a heart rate variability. And I found that to be very powerful too. Like in my mind, I kind of had that skepticism. Is like, oh, does this thing actually work? Like I've read and researched the science, and a lot of it makes sense to me. But like as practicing and using it, does it actually work? And so I'd clip it to my ear, and it would detect my heart rate variability, and would use it for like meditation. And notice that it seemed like there was some kind of change as my emotional states. I would kind of shift as I was going through the meditation practice, but still kind of had that question in the back of my mind. And then I think I kind of just got lost in the meditation, and all of a sudden I think a situation came into my mind that I was either passionate or angry about. And the moment that happened, the device shifted, and it was a very significant change that was feeding back to me my emotional state that at that point I wasn't aware I was in that emotional loop. And so it was very helpful because it brought consciousness to me in that moment to be like, oh, the device is telling me I'm experiencing something that's incoherent, which would be some type of like disruptive emotion. And then when I saw that, it beeped at me or vibrated at me. And then I realized like, oh, I actually am experiencing a disruptive emotion right now. And then it gave me a moment to be with it instead of like being lost on the ride with it. And so I absolutely love some of the new technology that's coming out for this biofeedback information. And in the same way, Judith, that there's ways I think it's helped me to become more aware of that this is actually happening in our social relationships all the time as well. And oftentimes we reject it. And I think it's definitely a practice to find that there's a lot of abundance in these social interactions that can give us a lot of good information about ourselves to help us improve our own lives and give ourselves a lot of self-care. Because as I've said before, often those around us know when we're triggered and we don't know ourselves. So instead of getting triggered about the trigger that they're noticing, instead kind of surrender into it and allow that to be part of the feedback that's actually food for our soul.
That kind of builds on emotional trauma that a lot of people, all of people being human, it's hard to be human. And we come from a lot of emotional trauma that we don't even know we're carrying because we've become a culture that's become desensitized. If you notice that the noise is getting louder and louder in our cultures, well, the reason it does, and the reason people are becoming more addicted to ice cream, for example, is they have triggers. And we do not want to feel. We have things called doctors, and they're very good at giving us something to make us feel better. And so when we have triggers and we are suppressing our ability to feel the triggers, many times as we heal, we'll have triggers that will get us in touch with deep emotional pain that's been there for a long, long time, but we don't know it. But it's coming to surface at certain times in our lives if we become more attentive to our feelings. So in every trauma, we have the ability to have triggers, and we'll think triggers are bad news because we don't want to feel bad, but they're opportunities for healing and growth. So in emotional times of great stress, I'm seeing that when we begin to awaken to the fact that something has made us feel a certain way, and we can begin to be more still with our bodies, and you could build on this better than me, Joey, because you help people to be centered and still so that they can actually be with and work with their bodies to see what their body's wisdom are telling them. And to work with the body to simply feel that thing, not understand it, but be able to breathe into it and release that tension. And I believe that it is how we make people feel that is the most important thing in life. So if I make a person feel a certain way, they'll never forget how I made them feel. And many times we can make people feel hurt or wounded because they already have hurt and woundedness. And we may be triggering someone without even knowing it. And so that's why I feel we see a lot of opportunity as we get better at having conversations and putting language to our own experience to see that if I can be more present to myself, I can see that the person that I think is triggering something in me is my enemy, is really doing me a favor to help me get in touch with a trauma that's already been sitting there from something before that was never resolved. Because we don't speak to the trauma because we're not taught how to talk, how to be real and authentic.
Completely.
Yeah,
And sometimes that we also diminish ourselves so that we don't trigger other people, and I think that can be a disservice often, because sometimes cutting things need to be said and felt in order to bring a level of consciousness up in the other people. So it's a slippery slope in a sense, depending on situations on how to do that properly. But there is actually a positive immune response inside oneself when expressing righteous anger, that there's some type of disservice, and like it's actually a healthy immune response for yourself. And oftentimes I would expect that it also creates a response in the other person to increase consciousness and see why that impact was there. So it's good and difficult on both sides, but that's the difficulty of the human experience. And as well, like what Kim was saying about using that device, like it sounds like instead of you like trying to point at things as to why you're feeling that way, you instead like had a high level of consciousness to be like, okay, I'm going to work with this, not trying to find out all the reasons and all the distractions or keep yourself away from it. Sounds like you kind of dove into it instead, and I think that's beautiful. I hope that's what more people can start to adopt, is we don't always have to understand why it's there, but that it is there gives us the ability to start to work with it, and then to widen our perspective on all the millions of ways that we could actually improve our own emotional state or feeling state, by many different alternatives. And you found those things, Kim. So I think that's beautiful that you kind of explored it and decided what worked best for you. And now you have more tools to add to your toolbox.
And expand your own health and well-being, because it's kind of like a labor of birth. Like we're all kind of explorers on the planet right now, beginning to know ourselves more deeply. And the more that we know ourselves, the more we can be more in authentic relationship with ourselves, because that's the bottom line. How much do I get to know myself and what a wonderful being I am, so that I can be a better presence for others, so they can see whatever they see in me, they would not be able to see unless it was in themselves. So my sense is that each of us work in ourselves and our individual capacity to be more fully human, more coherent and real with ourselves. And as you say, Joy, over the years, it's like our voices have been suppressed, because when you're little children, you're to be seen and not heard. And so expression and the ability to articulate, again, is a concern for me as I look at the young people of today in the classrooms of life, where the technology is taking over the capacity for them to be in also sharing circles where they can articulate from their hearts who they are as little children, full of wisdom. These young ones that are being born in this era are beautiful higher souls here to remind us that to be fully human, we must express and have relationship and not be replaced by machines and technology. So we're in this new era of great things happening, but we have to find the balance between the new and the old so that we don't go forward too quickly into this new era of just machines. So I think when we're looking at trauma, it takes many forms. And one of the things I'll touch on here too is a new word that I've just come into my consciousness that I was never familiar with before, and it's called ageism. Are either of you familiar with that word? Now, good for you, because I didn't even hear of it, but it's the ongoing, growing culture that has a tendency to bully older citizens. And so when you look at bullying and you look at the amount of bullying in the schools that's occurring, it's a primary concern of the modern day parent. If your child is different, and this is nothing new because children can be very hurtful, children have a good way of marking a child that's different and then picking on them. But I never thought of it as a chronic condition in our cultures where ageism is chronic bullying of senior citizens and elders who, again, don't have the capacity to have a strong voice because they may have never been able to find a voice in their lifetime because they were taught not to talk, just to be seen, but not to express oneself. So how do we build on that relationship as it relates to abundance? Is knowledge and new awareness a growing abundance in the sacred tree of life as we begin to flower into more fruit? How do we see these parallels of ancient esoteric teachings that bring forth the sacred tree of life? What is the rootedness of all that in the human family in this era?
That's such a huge question, Judith. Huge question. Um, what's been popping into my mind, because I was reading or listening to those books. One of them was The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. And he talked about the concept of really like surrendering, not in a defeated kind of way, but surrendering to life's experiences in the form of gratitude, like being grateful for every experience that comes your way. And when other people might say something, if you do get triggered, or people have all sorts of different ways of interacting and communicating, instead of battling with another human in front of you, being open to surrendering to the experience, allowing that person to be whatever it is that they feel that they need to be in that moment, whether it's a tantrum or rage, or I mean, if it's rage, get out of the way, right? But allowing them to be human, because being human is what we're here to do. We're here to experience humanity and life, and there's ups and there's downs and there's beauty and there's sorrow and there's all these different, it's like a roller coaster, all these different pieces of humanity that when you put it together, it creates a whole that really, really is beautiful. Even the ugly parts, it really is beautiful when you look at the vastness of our experience that we get to have here on this planet as humans. So that's another form of abundance, is there's always an abundance of experiences that we can learn from and grow from. And when you're open to just surrendering to that, life is more fun, because then you're not judging, you're not like, oh, I don't like that, and you're like pushing it. You're just leaning into each experience, and it's so much richer. Like, I've been testing it myself the past like week or so, trying to like get myself to or not trying to get myself as much as, just allowing myself to feel into each experience that's coming into my path, you know and being willing to sit with that. So
And
it's
to go
that's what I've been doing. It's powerful.
with the flow, because that's what makes it magical.
Yeah.
We're living in such amazing times where we're students and teachers, and all life is polarity. So the gift of another being saying to me something that they would not see unless it was in themselves is helping me to see that I am polarity. In as much of this energy as I have, I also have this energy. Everything is about energy. So bringing forth fruit is getting beyond that ego of judgment of something good or bad. It just is. It's energy. And the more we lighten up and play with the energy and have fun with the energy, and honor that every day I am having such an amazing time, and it's such a tragic thing that it takes the person to have 79 years of life experience to get to the point to live from magic. And how wonderful that you young people are starting it at an earlier age. Every generation can lighten up and begin to live the magic of being fully human and enjoying this magnificent planet, right? And to me, that's what the sacred tree of life is about. It's this abundance, this fruit that comes forth from the human experience of shaping those life and events into the wonderful fruit that we're meant to be for each other. And Joey, you're living in a time of a great era of helping people to see that don't judge trauma, honor it as a wonderful way of growing in relationship with our own bodies, with our own selves. So building that, Joey, on the work that you're doing way out in Colorado, and Kim, you're in Philadelphia, and here I am in Canada, and we've met through this wonderful thing called technology, and through kindred spirits that introduced us. Now, isn't that magical in itself? So Joey, speak to what the work that you're doing out there and the things that are affecting you in a new way just in the last year that we've been meeting online.
Yeah, I mean, I actually very interested in that book. I haven't heard it yet, but it's kind of at the core of what I do for emotional healing, which is learning to surrender to our feelings. And that it seems that it's much less exhausting than the opposite, which is trying to fight our feelings or stay righteous and judge everything and all the things we've kind of been programmed to do as a species, which, you know, some of those things have benefits, but it seems that as we become more accepting at what life offers to us, that we become less attached and have less expectations, and by doing that, I think we don't come short. So if we constantly expect things of others and don't get it back, then we always come short, because we can't expect others of certain things. And it was essentially the situation that I brought up with being in the garden with the nettles. I had these emotions that arose because I expected certain things for it to not be so difficult, and had ways that I could have prevented it, but I didn't know until I knew. And the only way to actually get what I wanted, which was a garden that didn't have so much nettle in it, was to do the work. And while doing the work, that required me to experience the feelings as they came up and to surrender to them. And then when I did, to keep working. And then to also take the signals from my body of when I had enough. So, you know, my plan and expectation was to get as much out as I could, which was almost all of it, if not all of it. And I probably got a third of that. And so that again was surrendering to that, that my body was done at that point and I have more days ahead to do more. But I don't have to do it all at once. And I know in the past I probably would have, and then I would have been hurting from it. And so there was no reason to do that, right? Like it was better to allow myself to learn what I did from it, to surrender to what I was capable of doing at that time, and for that to be enough. And I feel like the garden teaches me things about life as well with relationships. So yeah, I'll have to get that title from you, Kim. I think that sounds like a very good topic that I would really very much enjoy, because it seems like it's almost in a way like what the ancients have been teaching for a long time through meditation as well, of, you know, non-attachment and so forth. That surrender kind of is one of those pieces that can be applied in many places, that exactly like you said, Kim, it opens up this entire platform of abundance, that when we can be like centered in situations that used to rock us, we're no longer myopic. We now open our perspective to be able to see, oh, there's so many choices actually here, and so many opportunities that I didn't realize were there because I was so stuck in it, that now you kind of allow yourself to be with it, and then now see that there's so many more avenues to be able to explore. So I think it's such a beautiful concept.
And also to share with others the possibility of how you can use the new technology in different ways. The more we open our minds to be creative, and the more relationship with our bodies. So again, everything becomes a teacher and we the student. And it's the same with people. We're all teachers and students for each other, because whatever a person sees in me, they would not be able to see unless it was in themselves. And the same goes for me. Whatever I see in another person, they're simply mirroring back to me what's already part of who I am, right? And not to judge it, but just to know that to be fully human, I'm many things. I often think it's funny when people ask, who are you? And I always like the saying that Christ had many thousands of years ago, where he said, I am that I am that I am. Well, that's what we are. We are energy. We're many things. We're multidimensional. And there's just so many ways to care and love our souls on a planet that really is hard to stay in our bodies, because there's so much noise. Many times we're in fear and chaos and trauma. And in order to survive, we don't stay present. And that's one of the challenges in these times of living through so much change. We need to get better at being centered and rooted and present to ourselves in order to be a presence to others in a really good way, to hold space for others, to be who they are without judgment. And that is a powerful tool of healing, when a person can come to you and say who they are and share their story, and have another human being listen from the heart. And that person can actually get to know themselves in a new way, beyond the constant judgment that seems to be part of the record playing in a culture of materialism and capitalism, where working too hard and doing what you're doing never seems to be good enough. So always trying to reach somebody else's expectations. And again, those are records that have to be looked at so we can stop playing those same records. And so these are very powerful times in abundance to find that balance, and to look at what is so important about the next thing we're going to be talking about next month around friendship. And sometimes we have to look at ourselves and say, hey, I can be my best friend for me, to care for me first, and not be running all over the place to be good friends with too many people, and make sure I'm caring for my friendship, my relationship with myself first. So on that note, I think we can just build on what we're looking forward to next month. And Joy, could you share with everybody what the theme is and what the date is? And have you put it on the screen by any chance?
No, not yet.
Okay, and I'll be sending an update for next month soon with some.
Oh yeah, so it's on the website currently. And then it looks like June 19th is our next Oneness conversation.
Not May 15th?
Oh yeah, we are in April, aren't we?
We're into spring flowers here. Too early.
April 15th, correct. Sorry, May 15th. May 15th topic is friendship.
Aha.
So yeah, that's on the website. We will be back here on May 15th and to discuss friendship as we build on top of abundance. It's a great follow-up, Judith. Thanks for laying all of those topics out.
Yeah, and I must apologize. I've been remiss in doing the next 5 or 6 months, but that will be taking place sometime in the next week. The elders go at a slow pace, like a turtle.
And on what you were saying earlier about like the question of who am I heard the other day, it was more talking about like generalist and work, but the concept that I enjoyed that someone shared with me was he calls himself a specialized generalist. So I think there's something very important with that. I was kind of labeling it like Renaissance man. It's kind of the idea that you know many different things. And I like the specialized generalist because it ties like two opposing ideas together. And I think that's what's very difficult about answering that question, who am I, is like, there's not really a way to do that. And if you can answer it very specifically, I wonder what that leaves you from not gathering in your life as well. because we are like naturally dynamic beings. We're constantly changing. We're constantly adapting. We're very anti-fragile and resilient. So like, if those are truths, then there's also this way where, yes, we can specialize in certain things, but there's also, I think, living a full life almost requires this generalist way of being curious and passionate about multiple things. And then I feel like that's what helps to improve, for me personally, my own fingerprint and individuality of who I am and what I contribute to the world. Because otherwise, I feel like if we specialize, we kind of become robotic, myopic, and have blinders on to the rest of the world. So I absolutely love these conversations, because I believe it helps me personally to be able to do that, to widen my perspective on so many other viewpoints, and learn more about both of you and how we live in the world.
And how beautiful, because you're reminding me of how people see me. It's so interesting how people will see us, right, as individuals. I must share something really amusing. I am going to a wonderful naturopathic doctor, and he's in his elder years like myself, heading towards 80. So he described me my last visit. He said, if somebody were to ask me who I see you as, I see you as an elder hippie. And so what I find him always amusing in life is I may be an elder hippie to him, but I see him as an elder hippie. So, as I was saying earlier, when we can stay here long enough and we get a wonderful sense of humor, one of the greatest things in life is a good sense of humor. And working in the garden and nature, to come full swing back to what you were talking about, Joy, and to what you were talking about, Kim, working with the new technology, the new science that's coming through, and being grounded on this planet, staying centered, working with nature, weeding, planting, pruning. Those are all the things that are basic to be fully human. And what really defines us is what's deep inside our core, who we are as deeply spiritual beings, beginning to understand that we're energy. And the more we can play with that energy and have fun and go with the flow. And your wonderful wake up calls came at 8 o'clock. I just love those, and I may get up early enough someday soon. Beyond 7:30, I'm usually eating at 8 o'clock. So if I can change my schedule, I'll do the singing and then have my breakfast. But I think it's a marvelous way to awaken people to a new day. For in every new day, I think we're called to live from that abundance and joy. And the better I keep doing that for me, the more I can bless others to know they can do it for themselves. And if we can lighten up and take ourselves less seriously, we'll help the world to see that we're living in these times that the grandmothers have been talking about for many years, a time to live and sing and dance and drum from joy. And that's the joy that we're called to be. And sometimes it's very hard because we're going through the drama and the trauma of addictive patterns of human beings conditioned to be less than they are. But human beings are rising up now to recognize we're more than we've been conditioned to think we are. We're beautiful souls. So Thomas More has a book called Care for the Soul. And for the listeners listening today, that was a very meaningful book for me many, many years ago, as was Weeding in My Garden, Joey. I did a lot of deep emotional work on myself, connecting with a lot of pain by weeding my garden and doing a lot of drumming. So there's so many different ways of beginning to work with the energy that we are, because it's simply energy. And repressed energy can turn into disease, but the more we honor that we're energy and help people touch that energy so we can see as much pain as I also have compassion. And as much compassion as I also have the ability to love myself and to love others as myself. But that's the process of spiritualization and the alchemical process of the ancients that have always reminded us that we're more than we think we are conditioned to be. And the listening is so important. So listening to ourselves and listening to others helps us to see ourselves more clearly, that we're really one universal human family in these times of great awakening. So thank you. And you were going to do a closing for us, Joey, and I think we have to think about Kim going on with her wonderful life.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kim first if there's anything she wanted to add and contribute, anything else that was unsaid that you'd like to say before I do close.
Yeah, the only thing was just reiterating this idea that when we are open, abundance is everywhere. Like an abundance of choices, an abundance of paths that we can take, an abundance of friends and family and resources. Like it's all there when we take the time to not fight or get stuck in our own ways of how we think things need to be, but when we just really just relax and stay open to the process and the experience in front of us, that's when all these ways open up to us. And if you try it, you will see that we really do have so much abundance just flowing into our lives each and every day, each and every moment. It's there. Abundance is everywhere. So I hope that everyone listening today takes that message to heart. Abundance is here, it is everywhere, and it's for each and every one of us. Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, and there's so much available to us, and the next thing is how to make a choice, and that's also what leads us to next week, which is friendships. We make choices in who we spend our time with, and we are reflections of those that we choose to share our time with, which is why I love to do this, because it's a beautiful reflection of people that I love to spend my time with to help me to improve myself as well. And so we'll see everybody next month, May 15th. At the normal time of 2:30 Eastern for the topic of friendship. And as always, it's been lovely chatting with you all in these oneness conversations. And I look forward to the rest of the year.
And
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you for being such a blessing to the world. And have a wonderful 4 weeks, everyone. Enjoy life. It's sacred. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody.